coming in from my man Joe Cowley saying, according to a source, Bulls also feel there is a growing trade market for Zach LaVine, with a handful of teams feeling like they have no shot at several of the coveted free agents that will be out there. Let the game of chicken begin. And this was absolute music to my ears when I got this report a couple days ago. So, good news there that a trade market could be growing for Zach LaVine. But, the biggest kicker with LaVine is definitely his contract. And, speaking of a kicker, he does have a 15% trade bonus when he does get traded. So that will go up 15% on all of these years once he is dealt. But in 26 does have that player option of 48 million. If I had to call it right now, he's probably going to opt into that. But this is probably the biggest red flag that teams are seeing when discussing a trade for Zach LaVine. But if the trade market is growing, I want to go over 5 teams that I could see, swinging a Zach LaVine trade. And the team we have heard the most reported and connected to possibly landing the 2-time All-Star is the Sacramento Kings. And, I thought once they signed Malik Monk to that 4-year, $78 million deal, that the Kings front was kind of going to slow down a little bit. But there was actually reports suggesting that even though they did sign Malik Monk, it does not change their thoughts on Zach LaVine, and they could be interested. So what could a trade look like? We'll keep it simple. I don't think the Bulls are going to be able to get any first-round picks for LaVine if they are getting, obviously 2 players involved. And, this would be Kevin Huerter and Harrison Barnes for LaVine. I don't love this deal.
And a good afternoon to everybody. How the heck we doing? Ryan in Sacktown with you. It's been since Friday that we have all come together. At the top, you heard some news that is actually reported by Chat Sports. They're doing blogs on the Bulls. They're still talking LaVine. It is draft week. How are we feeling about it? Game 7. Last night, my man C-Dog, dude, they just ran out of gas. Simply ran out of gas. It felt like Connor McDavid was on the ice almost the entire third period, and you could see it when they were, doing their shifts at the end, when the puck got sent all the way back to the other side and they regrouped for that last play. They had nothing left in their legs, and can you blame them? What a valiant effort by the Edmonton Oilers. They could not complete the comeback. Your Stanley Cup champions, the Florida Panthers. Couple things, by the way. Why are we throwing rats on the ice? Rats on the ice. I know it's not the first time we've seen it, but I get the fish, I get the hats, but the rats? What? And then here's the other thing. C-Dog, I was going to challenge you about this. Can they remove the play from hockey where the guy all but falls on the puck? He just stands there over the puck and causes this little scrum that takes up 20, 30 seconds. Boxers who hug each other think that play is lame. Gosh, that's kind of a crappy way to end a really exciting game, but whatever. I am nitpicking. Thank you so much, Bane. It is great to be back. It was a working weekend, regardless. We talked about some of the news first reported by The Athletic about De'Aaron Fox. Not a surprise, but I do kind of want to talk about the back end of that. Look, De'Aaron was one of those guys that was all about Malik, get your money, get your bag. Totally understand that. Totally for players getting as much as they could possibly get. And I think you leave it at that, right? It's, look, I could possibly get a Supermax. I'm going to turn down 55 over 2 years for the possibility of what, 253? What was it, 61 a year if De'Aaron was to make all NBA or hit any of those trademarks? You leave it at that, and it's completely fine. I don't think there's a lot of room for ambiguity at that point, right? But then there's the tail end of that as well. They want to see, or De'Aaron wants to see, and I'm paraphrasing here, what Sacramento does with the roster. So why do you release that, right? I mean, is that just putting a little bit more pressure on the front office? We want to see some more moves. I'm going to leave it up to all you. We can talk about it some more. I don't have a problem with it either way. It's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. Look, this is an opt-out league unless you are Zach LaVine in this case, where you can pretty much project, as they said at the top of the show, he would opt into the last year of his contract. And where does all that stand with the Kings? Are the Kings still in the hunt for Zach LaVine? And how do you feel about that 15% trade bonus on his contract? I don't think it makes a difference at any point. But again, we've got a lot to go over. Also, with the NBA draft, this is actually one of the more interesting NBA drafts that I can remember in a long time, because we know there's not that consensus number one. We know that for sure. But it's more of putting your scouting, putting your front offices to work to identify where that special talent's going to be, because everybody's eye is a little bit different. And the big kicker that we keep hearing about, or at least I keep hearing about, is shooting potential with many of these prospects. And that's why what's going to happen later this week in the draft is going to be so interesting. And it actually, there's one player that I want to point out, Donovan Clingan. Let's talk about him for a second. I think he's indirectly changed the game for Sacramento in this sense. It's that when Sacramento was dangling that 13th pick out there, it really didn't mean much to Chicago with Caruso, because they are high on Clingan. They want him. You know who else wants him? Memphis. And when I look at Clingan, to me, he is going to determine what this lottery does. I mean, you've heard reports maybe he goes one. I think Reese Shea is probably going to be your number one pick. He's the odds-on favorite. Alex Sarr has also made it pretty clear indirectly that it doesn't seem like he has any interest in going to Atlanta. Never worked out with them. In fact, never spoke with them, and has talked to Washington. Seems like Washington has interest there, but this is going to be an unbelievable draft. It really will. There's going to be some very good role players that come out of this thing, and that is what you have to look for. Don't get me wrong. There's going to be one of those diamonds in the rough. There always is. But there are some solid role players and teams, depending on what they think they can do to develop some of these guys, maybe reaching higher than you think. A Kyle Filipowski from Duke. Could you see him go in the lottery? There's a lot of unanswered things here. So I want to get to that. We can talk about it. And we haven't even said this yet. It is Jerry Reynolds Tuesday. Jerry's going to be joining us here in a little bit. Looking forward to having him on the show. We'll get his reaction to, we'll talk about the draft a little bit, but also get his reaction to the timing of the Malik Monk deal, amongst any things. If you have questions for Jerry Reynolds, put them in the chat. I'd be more than happy to try to get those to him. Speaking of the chat, I don't want to neglect it any longer. Let's get to it. Alberto, what's up? So LaVine is likely coming to Sac? No, not necessarily. This is, if you know pro sports, this is the smoke screen time where you're putting all these different things out about who you're looking at, who you're not. And when the guy's talking about a trade market for LaVine, define market, just like we talked about Mike Brown and his extension. You know, was it tabled for good? Was it tabled for the night? I've used that example many times. So you can't believe everything you hear from the teams right now. But yeah, a lot going on. LaVine, we will see. Touch and go there. Hell's Kitchen. First off, I should say, our Bizzle, thank you. Or our Dizzle. Our Dizzle. Gosh darn it. Why can't I remember that right now? Thank you. That went towards our appetizer. He gave us a super chat on Friday. And a huge thank you to Bane for the super chat for Grant and I's birthdays last week. We're going to hit up Bennett's when Grant is back from Florida. But Hell's Kitchen was great. And I'll give you a full rundown on that. You know what wasn't as great? The slots. And you know what else was even worse than the slots? The parking. Wait till I tell you the parking story in Tahoe. It was bonkers, but it was a fabulous vacation, beautiful weather. It was warm up there for sure. We got 18 in, that is on the mini golf course, which was a lot of fun for the little one. But I'll give you a full rundown of that weekend. We had a very good time. So thank you for asking. How about the PGA finish? Well, which part of it? The protesters or Scotty keeping it together? But yeah, that was wild. Wild indeed. Finchy, what is up, dude? How are you doing? Hey, Ryan, tell me about the weekend. We will talk about the weekend in a little bit. I am happy to give you the full rundown. Yes, the draft is almost upon us. And I'm telling you, this draft again, and talk about clinging. You're talking about very interesting as a Yukon fan. You've got two that are definitely going to go. My guess is in the top 7. You've probably got 3 overall there. Bobby Hurley, Dan Hurley has been a great advocate for some of those guys. In fact, Dan was advocating a lot, and I mean a lot, for Donovan at that number 1 pick with Atlanta. So we will see. Dennis, what's up, my man? Hope you are having a good one. Thank you for checking in. Of course, you have a question for Jerry. You always do, Dennis. I got you, brother. Haunted Horse is in. Get to the chat, you bum. We're doing bum smack this early. I come back. And by the way, there was no King's Court yesterday. We were planning to do a show together, Grant and I, at 4:00, but had some family stuff come up. Family comes first. As much as I love all of you, had to take care of that. But all is fine now. Let's see. Dennis, yeah, you can put your question in. I see you. You're going back to the Levine trade. Dog, literally. Yep, we already talked about that. 13 or ship it. So here's where I'm at with the 13th pick. I think you keep it unless it's going to be part of a much bigger deal for somebody that Kyle Kuzma, for instance, that's a name that we keep hearing here in Sacramento. I think you ride it out for a couple of reasons. You could get a decent role player there. You really could. And when I say decent role player, it's not immediate. It's going to take a little time for them to fit in, but you have 4 years guaranteed at a certain rate. And I think there are a couple players, depending on what happens with the lottery. And that's really the key about keeping it or shipping it. It's what happens in front of you. There really is no rhyme or reason to how teams are going to pick after probably the top 3. It could even start at the top with Donovan Clingan, as we talked about. That could start there. If the Hawks take him 1, which he is not the favorite to go 1 right now, it's Risa Shea. But I think it's crazy because teams, again, I can't reinforce this enough. Usually it is best available player. That's how you draft. But when you look at the top of the draft, so many of these guys have so little experience, or they've had injury problems, or maybe they've been in school 3 or 4 years, which some teams prefer. Some teams don't like that. Again, this draft is going to be so tailored to what your organization is trying to game plan around. This is more of a custom pick rather than a one size fits all pick, if that makes sense to you. So you may see some teams go unconventional. You might see some guys come off the board that you didn't even have in the lottery. And no, I'm not talking about Bronny James. Bronny James is probably going 55th. But if something happens in front of you where there's no guy for you, the guy you want is not there, then I'm in the camp of trading back. If that means also that your big deal is not on the board. And some of this, again, has to do with Washington. What if Washington brings in Alex Sarr? He's a smaller center. The shot has a lot of questions. He's got a really skinny slider built. He can play on the perimeter. But you've kind of got that in a Kyle Kuzma. So does that move mean anything when it comes to Kuzma's market? And it's just all up for grabs right now. So I do ultimately think the Kings get a veteran guy. I really do think that. But I would not be surprised if they keep that pick and make that pick. And again, we're going to go over some of those names here in a little bit. Yeah, this was one of the things. I think it's a fine decision. JJ Redick, I mean, he's making a lot of money to be an assistant coach, but I think it was a fine move. It was the move that was written all over the wall. But Grant and I have these conversations all the time on the 8 o'clock shows about what's wrong with the NBA. Okay. What's wrong? Is it the officiating? Is it the style of play? Why are people being turned off to the league, to the association? Is it the lack of building stars, the lack of superstars? What is it? Ratings were low, 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 even though the NBA is still going to get a massive number with the upcoming rights deal. But I look at the press conference yesterday with JJ Redick. I'm not sure if any of you got a chance to watch it, but JJ Redick was asked about the LeBron James factor. How many discussions did you have with LeBron about taking the job, what that would look like? And JJ, with a straight face, said that he never spoke to LeBron James about it until he was offered the job. And then they spoke for about 15 minutes. The NBA seems to be one of the only leagues that gaslights its fans, that treats us like we are effing stupid. Do you think in any world those two did not have conversations about JJ coming to the Lakers? Get out of here. And even the casual fan can see that. Don't treat your fans like they are stupid. If you go back and you listen to the soundbite of when JJ answers the question, you can literally hear a reporter kind of snickering, making a noise, as I probably would have too. It's a joke. You know that those two had conversations. You absolutely know it. So to me, embrace it. Just come out. Don't treat your fans like they're stupid. And so to me, that is a problem with the NBA. I mean, how much do they think they can really pull the covers over our eyes? We see through it. I mean, does anybody honestly, I'm going to ask this honestly, do any of you believe for a second that those two did not talk about the possibility of JJ Redick being the head coach? What that looks like now, what this probably is a play on words. They probably talked about coaching in depth. They didn't talk about being the Lakers coach. So those are those little things, and I'm making an assumption there. I'm showing you an example of what I'm talking about, where it just turns you off. It's so disingenuous. Lean into the story. That's what I would do. Lean into it. That's what's going to pull people in. You're going to push them away when you do stuff like that. But time will tell with JJ. I mean, hey, here's the one thing that I'm happy about. I'm a podcaster. Does that mean that I have a shot at being an NBA head coach? Who knows? I don't know. Maybe the Warriors job opens up eventually. Maybe the Portland job, haunted horse. Maybe I can throw my name in the hat, because now we can go from podcaster straight to NBA head coach. BJ hopping back in. Yeah, what's the market say about Levine? How many other teams are looking at his contract versus games played? It's probably one of the only things you're looking at. I had this conversation not too long ago. Who was I having it with? I think it was TC. We were talking about it, and I said, at this point, any team that's seriously looking into Zach LaVine, and that's actually a great question I'm going to bring up to Jerry Reynolds, is what does that due diligence entail? How much information can you get? Because aren't you kind of guarding that? I know you got to pass a physical in order for the trade to go through, or in most cases, you have to pass a physical. Sometimes that will be waived, but how much information do you give out on his health and how bad certain things are? Hell, a great example of this is Cody Williams. So Jalen Williams' brother, who's expected to be probably a top 7 pick in the draft, would not be surprised. I would be shocked actually if he falls out of the top 10. He had a couple of injuries his freshman season, and then the third injury was actually the worst, even though one of them included a broken orbital bone, which caused him some double vision. but he had a pretty significant ankle sprain. In fact, a sprain that if he kept playing on it longer than he actually did, it could have caused some permanent damage. He made the decision to keep playing. In fact, that was, or at least I should say, that was diagnosed by an independent doctor reviewing Cody Williams' medical records, reviewing anything, any actions taken by the athletic training staff and the doctors at the University of Colorado Boulder. And those are the opinions that I'm talking about, right? Those are the things that start coming out in the draft. So, what kind of information can you get on Zach LaVine right now and his health? One thing that does not change about that is the number. It is a big number. And again, I go back to the De'Aaron Fox situation. De'Aaron certainly looking, hopefully, to get a supermax, which would require him to make first or make all NBA, et cetera, et cetera. We can talk about that more in a little bit. But, Tuesdays are made for one person, and that is Mr. Jerry Reynolds. Jerry, welcome into the King's Court today. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good, I mean, basically, as long as you can kind of stay inside, it's doable, but a little warm. I'm spoiled. I kind of like those 75 to 80 days, that's more my speed. But yeah, anyway, it's all good. It's all good. Every day's a good day.
Every day's a good day. Yeah, I think you were in Tahoe this weekend as well. We escaped the heat, got the nice 75, 80-degree weather up there. It was beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. It's so nice because generally it's 20 degrees cooler than here.
Yes.
And so you can always that's what, me and my wife like, is because when it's 110 here, well, it'll be hot up there, but at least you're going to have most of the day very comfortable. So there's that. But,
yep.
For the most part, we get spoiled down here. You just got to deal with a couple of weeks of year, that are really uncomfortable hot. But having grown up in the Midwest, I always say the difference between California and Missouri or Indiana or somewhere is that we used to have about 65 great days a year.
Mm-hmm.
You have 300 great days a year.
Yeah, this is true.
I don't know for sure if it's worth the tax difference. Don't get me wrong. I'm starting to question whether a little pain in that area might, So anyway, close call, getting closer.
Yeah, I think Nevada and Idaho, they've seen plenty of people that have had that same problem, Jer, here in the last couple of years.
I think so.
Speaking of tax problems, Malik Monk signs on with the Kings 4 more years. He does not test free agency on the open market. Jerry, thoughts on it, number one, and number two, were you surprised that at the timing?
A little bit. Not completely, because I know kind of how the league works, and I suspect that they were aware, legally or illegally, that there weren't going to be significantly bigger offers out there. And but what I think happened, and to his agent's credit and Malik's, I think they got a good deal on the fact that he's got a player option.
Yes.
So basically and I think it's fair that from the Kings' perspective as well, I think both sides came out. Malik didn't get the money he wanted. Maybe it wasn't there. I think that probably wasn't. But in 3 years, with the kind of year he's had, if he can continue to stretch those together, he can opt out and certainly then be a total free agent and certainly be in a position to make up the difference at that time. So it's good for all concerned. And Malik has protected himself, both ways. So if his play doesn't come up, then he'll exercise the option.
Exactly right.
And this will be the biggest contract of his life, which I don't think that it will.
Interesting. You think that there could be more down the road for Malik? You think this is the start of the rise?
Yeah, I think when you look at it from the standpoint of 3 more years, I think that just gets him to his peak. It's not to say he'll get a lot better, but he's still young enough that so he'll be able to option out after 3 years. So if I'd be surprised if he's not better in 3 years than he was this year. And so if that's the case, the Kings there'd be a lot of pressure on them to pay him more, since he would be their own free agent and they would have his bird right. And then plus other teams. I mean, I like to say, I think it's a chance certainly for Malik, whether he gets more in the next contract or not. But the point is, he's pretty much got generational wealth now.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
chance for probably the same kind of contract, if not better, going forward.
Very good point, Jerry. Joining us here on the show. A lot going on the NBA draft this week. Some reports came out earlier this week, Jerry, about De'Aaron Fox not looking to sign an extension. He declined last year, looking like he wants to decline this year, opt for the possibility of getting the Supermax. But on the back end of that, there were also some comments along the lines of, he wants to see what happens with this Sacramento organization. Do you take that with a grain of salt, or does that bother you at all?
Doesn't bother me at all. I think, honestly, it's a smart move on his part.
Agreed.
Just from the standpoint of contract, I think he has a lot of confidence in himself and feels that maybe in the next 2 years he can be an all-NBA player and be in a position to get a significantly larger contract, as well as, in the eventuality that the team didn't improve, well, he's got some options, would have options available. I think it's a smart move. I mean, if he didn't already have a huge contract, if I were his agent, I probably would encourage him to take the extension.
Yeah.
But the fact here again, we go back to generational wealth. He's already set for life regardless what happens. So basically it's easier to bet on yourself and take the risks of injuries or something on the premise that I can get a lot more money by doing that. I mean, certainly LeBron James is the epitome of a guy who's done that consistently.
Yeah, speaking of LeBron James, the Lakers get their guy. They introduce JJ Redick. I'm not sure if you had a chance to see the introductory press conference. Any thoughts so far on JJ and what you think the Lakers are going to be looking to do with him running the show?
Well, I think what I think is that JJ will probably check with LeBron to see what he's supposed to do. I don't I wish him the worst, that. And I think JJ is a very bright guy and all that, but having never coached, it just tells me that LeBron, this is the guy LeBron wanted. They can say whatever they want to say, but I believe this was LeBron's hire, like most coaches. And the problem with it is, even if he's a very good coach, which he could be, LeBron's at the age where it might start sliding pretty fast.
Great point.
And the hardest thing to coach, I think, is a superstar that's sliding, that really isn't a superstar anymore, because most of them aren't ready to accept that. So, like I say, I'm glad, I guess from a Kings perspective, I'm happy they hired JJ Redick. It does disappoint me that guys like Elston Turner and Honore and Brian Gates, guys that I've known have been assistants for several teams and all successful, very important parts of it, not considered for a job like that. Or David Adelman, Rick's son, had 8 or 10 years as an assistant coach on very successful teams. So, but that's a league. It just takes one person to want to hire him, and that's what you get,
Yeah, I want to dig a little bit deeper there. What is it about that? Is it being pigeonholed just as a great assistant? Is it maybe working for a head coach that doesn't push his assistants to get promotions to become head coaches? How does that work where great guys are not getting opportunities?
Yeah, I wish I could have an answer for that, because I think part of the problem today is there's so many assistant coaches. How do you get any traction?
Sure.
I mean, for most staffs, it's hard to, I'd say even loyal fans of their own teams couldn't name half of the assistants. And, so that, I think that's one of those things that hurts, unless unless the team is really successful and the assistant coach is out front, so to speak, a lot, it's probably tough. And then you do have the JJ Reddicks or Docs, that come from the booth. That of course, Doc had been a coach before, successful and unsuccessful.
Yeah.
But the former and then there's always the flavor of the day. The former great player that they want to assume will be a great coach. And sometimes it works. Certainly it worked for Larry Bird and didn't work for Magic. Hasn't worked for some.
Either did the late night show.
Yeah. So it's but I think the one thing I think is really different in the pro game than the college game, which I associate with. In the college, they always had committees, and maybe an athletic director and a committee, a lot of people involved as well as the president. So usually one person could make the decision always. That's the president. Usually that they never did. They would cede to the committee led by the athletic director. Well, in the NBA, quite honestly, anytime the owner, if they want to be involved, and they usually are, then that's the only person you have to impress. Ask
Sure.
ask Monty Williams.
Yeah. What did you make of the timing of Monty Williams being dismissed? That was bizarre to me, Jerry.
That's one of the more bizarre things, really too. And I know the team was terrible, but was it Monty's fault? Well, some maybe, but it's like, what did you expect when you hired him?
Exactly.
You hired him as a long-term head coach, build and all that, But I guess it seemed to me like it was a case of, okay, they got the general manager. They realized that he wasn't getting the job done. Been there a while. He's really the most likely to blame. And then they hire a new GM, Trajan Langdon. And in effect, it's, I think the old saying, he wants his guy.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, I understand. But if I'd been the owner there, it's like, well, your guy, it's going to cost me $65 million to help you just get your guy plus paying him. And maybe is he automatically better than Monty Williams?
Yeah.
They'll probably win more games, but I'd be surprised if they win more than 26-7 games next year. So, Monty would have probably done that in a year or two himself.
Yeah, it brings up the whole expectations thing. And I know the Kings fans, we have big expectations. We want this team to change dramatically. But, when you sign somebody that long for that much money, at least get a little bit of traction out of them. You're not turning a bad team into a great team overnight. I don't care how great of a coach you are.
No, it's a talent league. It's always been. I always say, Greg Popovich and Pat Riley, probably two of the all-time greatest. They both have had 2 seasons of less than 20 wins.
Yep.
Well, they didn't get dumb those years. Nope. They didn't have Duncan and Robinson or certainly Mourning and Hardaway. Those guys. They didn't have the talent.
Difference makers.
That's the way it is. So, yeah, it's a players' league, and good coaches can make it better. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But it definitely it's still a players' league, and if you don't have the talent, you're not going to win. That's the bottom line.
Talent drives everything, Jerry. Butts in the seats, everything. I got to ask you really quick, because I started the show on this, and Grant and I have these conversations all the time about things affecting the NBA product. And I know we talked a little bit about JJ and LeBron, but one of the things that stuck out to me was the fact that JJ was asked, what was the give and take, the conversations prior to you being hired with LeBron? And he said none until the job was offered to me. And in some ways, I feel like it's a microcosm of the NBA, sometimes making fans kind of, what's the right word, gaslighting them, treating them like they're stupid. Do you see a lot of that or some of that in other places in the league that's affecting the viewership?
Yeah, I think it's, there's no doubt there's quite a bit of it. It's really not to the level of our political systems,
Sure.
or or even media today. Where they selective in what information they think's information.
Yes, good
And
point.
that sort of thing. And I think that professional league and that, but like to that point, I don't think, I can't believe for 1 second that they didn't discuss it.
Yes.
You know,
Doesn't
I,
it seem like a play on words? Like you didn't discuss Lakers coach. Maybe you talked about coaching, like
yeah,
those
yeah,
little
or
loopholes.
things you could do as a coach, and you
Yes.
would have liked to seen the Lakers do that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean that's the old, just throwing up a smoke screen, but yeah, I know I'm getting cynical, but I believe there's more truth than cynicism there. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's like lean into it. That's what's going to draw the viewer in. It's like, yeah, we talked about it and watch what we're going to do on the court.
Yeah, I think that would have been a better way to go. I don't think it'd been any shame. You're on a podcast
No.
together. Uh, LeBron's very brilliant basketball mind. JJ Redick, very smart. He, had a good career, solid journeyman career. He wasn't a plumber or an electrician, but he had a good career. As he kind of threw out at the old timers, but that's another story. But yeah, anyway, yeah, it just made sense they discussed it. Nothing wrong with that at all. And say, yeah,
Nothing wrong.
I thought we were both interested in talking about situations and kind of helped get started. That would have been a more truthful and logical way to approach it.
It's kind of how the real world works, right?
Sure.
Like if you're going out looking to get a job, you feel around, you put some cards out, you talk hypotheticals. It's how it rolls. So Connor has a question for you, and I think I know the answer. You like big men, but he wants to know what you think a team would be willing to draft Klingon, or would a team be willing to draft Klingon in the top 5 as a 7'2" big man that's more of an old school traditional big man?
Well, that's a great question. I do think there'll be somebody that could very likely take him up there. I think he is, and he's an excellent point. I mean, he is an old school traditional big man. I mean, he's gonna protect the basket, patrol the paint, not really going to get you a lot of offense. It's one of those things, just like somebody that even mentioned Atlanta might even consider him at 1. Now, I don't think that's true, but I was saying it wouldn't make a lot of sense to me because I'm not sure right now he's not better than Capella.
No.
And I mean, not that he won't be in time, but anyway, yeah, he's I think teams that have enough scoring around them. If you got basically really good wings and guards that can all score, then Klingon really does fill a lot of the, it's like a Zubats a little bit with the Clippers.
Sure.
He's a terrific fit, and he can score a little. And I mean, Klingon, I think, is a better prospect than Zubats was when he came out. So, yeah, I like it. I like him. I'm not, like I say, but I think there's certain teams where he might not be as valuable, if you don't have the offensive players around him, which in fact, Connecticut did.
Yes,
or college.
Very much so. Very much so. He kind of has a feel of a guy that could be like a Steven Adams, but he's got the build already to step in and have some physicality. You'll know he's on the floor. And that's half the battle. It's being able to get your reps in early rather than sit the bench and then get your reps in.
Well, I do think he's a much better prospect at the same age, and I'm old enough to remember Rudy Gobert at the same age. I think he's significantly ahead of Rudy at the same age. Now, where it's going to go, it's still always a question. But anyway, so whoever gets him is getting a guy that can be a real focal point for their defense. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me that if San Antonio took him.
Yes, that's a good point.
Even though they've got a pretty good young center, but I think he'd be a better fit with Wembanyama myself, and really take a lot of the physicalness out and protect him from that.
That's a great point. That is a great point.
So anyway, but it's a crapshoot, whatever you do. But that's a great question.
Yep, very good question. Dog reportedly Memphis very interested in him. Also, Chicago, Atlanta isn't opposed to moving the 1 pick. So, as Jerry said, maybe a little bit of a smoke screen there with the interest. Are there a couple names, and we'll get to the Kings draft here in a second. Are there a couple names in this draft that you are expecting or you think could be surprises to be called in the lottery?
I don't know if there would be a surprise. I mean, I've just kind of looked at it from the Kings' perspective, but I do think it's one of those drafts where picking eighth, why wouldn't you feel about as good getting talent there as picking third?
Sure.
So I don't think, this to me, this is one of those drafts that there's going to be 2 or 3 all-stars in it. And I'd be willing to bet they won't come in the first 5 picks.
Yeah.
They're going to be somewhere, maybe, it may be 13. I don't know. It may be 19, 20, that sort of thing. And so that's why I think if you have to be 13th or 15th, this is not a bad year.
No.
To be that. And we talked last week about the draft where Kobe Bryant was 13 and Peja Stojakovic was 14 and Steve Nash was 15.
Yep.
3 of the 4 best players in the draft.
Yep.
So, and I'm not sure that's not a little bit. I find that a little bit similar with some of the guys that the Kings are looking at. I think could have some star potential. A lot of it's fit, a lot of it's being in the right spot, all that stuff.
Certainly. And to the Kings' point, Jerry, do you think the Kings are going to trade the pick? Do you think they're going to make the pick? What's your gut feeling as we sit today?
My gut feeling is they're going to trade the pick.
Okay.
I mean, I'm probably about, I don't have a great deal of insight, but I just know that from what I do know is they would like to, if they could, get something that they really like for it in addition to something else. So I think if they don't trade the pick, it's because they couldn't get the deal they wanted. I mean, I think that's what they would like to do. Because even if you get the guy you want at 13 and you think you got the right guy, he's still a young guy that probably isn't going to move the needle right away.
Sure.
And so that's why Monty McNair and his staff and the coaches, they know the West, and basically, as like I say, I'd say the day on radio to. Signing Monk was great and great, but it's also true he's the same player that he was. He's just making more money. So you didn't get better. You just you maintained where you were. Now the trick is you got to get better, and the only way you can do that is get players, somebody that's probably better than some of your starters you had last year, and maybe better fits. Like for instance, but I've heard that Bobby Portis might be available. Well, if he is, I'd sure try to get him.
Heck yeah.
Because I think he moves the needle and he's a perfect fit, with Sabonis. And so now all of a sudden you're bigger, tougher, better fit, that sort of thing. Now, I don't know if it's even true. I mean, he's Milwaukee's. But I think they're in a mood to maybe redo things. And certainly they would like to move Brook Lopez, but I think that ship has sailed a little bit, and time to kind of move it. But Portis should have 4 or 5 of his best years ahead, and so guys like that, if you're going to trade, get somebody can fit,
proven commodity,
proven commodity that has, hopefully 4 to 5 years at least of top flight basketball, because. Nobody can predict what's going to happen any further down the road than that anyway.
Exactly. I think in this Western Conference, you can't look any further than the opponent in front of you. It's going to be such a grind this year, night to night, for the teams in the West and especially in the Pacific.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be so scared of teams that were behind you. San Antonio, Houston, Memphis. I mean, the only team I think that you just shouldn't have to worry about is Portland right now. So there's 14 teams now that I think will, with Ja Morant healthy, and then like you say, if they can they'll get a good pick and maybe a center like a Clegan that would fit a need, since they don't have Adams anymore, that sort of thing. And as we know, when they were healthy, That
They
was
were good.
they were top of the West the year before. So anyway, that and then Houston, they were second half of the year. They were better than the Kings, as well as the Warriors and the Lakers. So you got to be scared of them, and they're going to get a good player at three, whoever it is, or trade it. Same thing. So yeah, I'm very, very concerned. And then there's the damn Spurs. We've got two.
I know. Two in the top eight.
And if they want to take the picks, they can get guys they really like, or they can certainly trade those picks for a more proven veteran. So, and my feeling is, as long as Popovich is there, they're going to make the right moves.
Yes, they are. He's proven himself many times over and will be in the Hall of Fame in no time. And Greg Popovich, do you have any good Pop stories? I know sometimes he's a little dry off or on the court, but I hear he's quite the character off the court.
Well, he is. I've talked to him on an awful lot of times, and he's a, very straightforward guy, just no bullshit,
Yeah.
If he's got something to say, he'll say it. And I always remember, the only thing I can remember, he was an assistant with Larry Brown in San Antonio when I was, I think my last stint as coach. It was a preseason game down in San Antonio, and there was a loose ball come to the sideline at the end of the quarter. Quarter's over, and I pick it up and shoot it. And I made it. And and Popovich, after the game, he said, you need to retire on that because you're not going to top that shot. I said, yeah, I think I will. I think that's it.
Oh my gosh, that's good stuff. Jerry Reynolds joining us as he does every Tuesday. I absolutely love it, and so does everybody here. Dave has a question for you. Jerry, why don't the Sacramento Kings use two centers at the same time like the old Twin Towers did to protect the rim, at least in some circumstances? Really quick, Dave. Jerry and I have had this conversation. We think the door's open to the center position swinging back to the bigs. Jerry, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's almost time, start thinking outside the box, go a little different way as opposed to one big, four out or five out and that sort of thing. I think that, I think you could win that way. That's why I say I wouldn't be disappointed if they took Zach Edey.
Yeah.
I really think that Sabonis and he could play together. Now you'd have to play different. You're not going to be able to run quite as much. You play more half court. You'd have to play more zone defense. Yep. But that's one of the things that scares me about San Antonio. If I were Pop, I would consider Edey at 4 or 8.
Sure, 8, yeah.
Because you can't move that guy.
Yep.
And he's just huge and skilled. The flaw is he can't go out and guard people on the floor, probably wings and guard. Well, okay, zone, you don't have to do that. And if him and Wembanyama, my goodness. Now you talk about a zone, you'd be zone.
You have to. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I don't know if you'd ever get a score at the basket.
You would have to. You remember? Maybe you don't remember this. MTV used to have this like rock and jock slam thing, and at the end of the quarters, they'd bring down this hoop that was a 25-foot hoop, and if you scored on the 25-foot hoop, you got 25 points. You would have to shoot a floater like that to get over those
you would.
two.
The thing is, I was talking to a couple of friends that are still scouting in the league, and they were telling me they were at the combine. They said Zach Edey shot threes very well.
I heard the same thing, Jerry. I heard I spoke to somebody that was at the combine as well, and they thought the shot from him was coming off smoother than even Ricochet, who's being considered for the number one pick.
Number one spot. I saw a quote from Coach Painter of Purdue, and he said, well, no, we knew he could shoot him, but we couldn't afford to have him out there. We had guards that could shoot him. And obviously, he was a 70%er in the low post, and nobody could stop. So
why go away from it?
Why go? Yeah. Why do anything different? So anyway, yeah, I think he's one of those guys, honestly, that due to what we've kind of said, that there is a little change, the power game, the knowing that you can go inside and get a basket is getting I think got some people's attention that you just can't look for 3-point shots all the time. Certainly the Celtics are pretty good proof of that. I mean, they can make threes, but they sure go to the basket and draw contact and get to the line and play a little post up at different times. So,
Yep.
it's worth remembering.
It's a great point. And when the Celtics struggled, most times it was because they fell in love with the three ball. They
Exactly.
weren't
That's
doing
about
that.
the only time they lost is when
Yep.
they just wouldn't get away from shooting the three. When, of course, we know that Tatum and Brown, those guys can get to the basket, and certainly Porzingis healthy. He's not a great post up player, but he's certainly a great guy to post up and shoot over the top of whoever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Dave bringing that up and then Sea-Dog talking about Klingon in the West with the way it's looking, Sacramento may really need to consider playing another big along just from a guarding standpoint, like you said, unless they're going to play zone. So I guess the question that I would ask you with the guys that the Kings have on the roster right now, how would you reshuffle the deck to change things up, freshen things up? What are a couple moves you would like to see happen?
Well, with their current roster, I mean, the only couple things, and I'm quite honest, I'm just not real encouraged by the current roster.
Yeah.
As far as being a top 4 team in the West, let's say, because I just don't think the talent matches up. But I mean, as small as the team is, but they do have guard depth. Maybe not, but I think you really need to press. Stretch the game out and get the game off the board. Make sure that teams have to use 15, 16 seconds to get the ball in play, and maybe zone more. Zone press, drop into zones a little more. You're going to give up some threes, but it's long rebounds, but allows you to get out in transition. So I would see that as one thing that with the current roster that they'd almost need to do, because they need to force more turnovers in order to make up for the protection at the rim kind of thing.
Absolutely.
There's ways of doing it, because if you're going to get out rebound a little bit, then the idea is to get more shots and more points. So
yes.
so however you do that, and sometimes you can be out rebounded by 5 or 6 and still get more shots because you forced 15 or 10 more turnovers.
Exactly. Yeah, I call it the special teams of basketball. It's the points off of turnovers. It's that type of game. And that's actually where the Kings at the end of the year excelled. I think you bring up a great point when they were able to switch a little bit more on the perimeter. And those guys that are still, or that are on the roster, they're going to be there next year. You're still going to have Keon. You're still going to have De'Aaron, Malik. So I think and Davion Mitchell as of now, I think you're spot on about using those strengths. I mean, De'Aaron's steals went way up the second half of the season.
Yeah, he really improved defensively, and I kind of thought Keon Ellis had a little bit to do with that. But Keon really, once he came in there, really changed things, and I think got everybody more involved. And I think the other part was you did see Keon and De'Aaron picking up before the half court line. Now I'd like to pick it up even sooner, but that was really different than starting to guard him at the top of the key or at the 3-point line. And so I like that. And the one last thing, if Coach Brown would ask me, I mean, whether you start Monk or not with his current lineup, he's probably your third best player. Your third best player should not be playing 26 minutes a game. He should be playing 34 minutes a game. So the old saying, it's not important who starts, it's who finishes. I agree. But I also think that your best players ought to be on the floor the most.
Yeah, it seems pretty straightforward, Jerry.
Whether you start them or don't. I mean, I always go back to the great teams of San Antonio with Manu Ginobili. He never started, but he played third most minutes.
That's right. That is right.
The reason he did is because he was a great player. He just didn't start.
Yeah, he could fit in perfectly with that starting unit, or he could bring a different look to them, whatever they needed in that situation. And that's what the special teams do. Jerry joining us for just a few more minutes here on Jerry Reynolds Tuesday on the King's Court. So If I said you're keeping the pick, the draft plays out the way that we think it's going to play out, or a lot of the way the experts are projecting, out of the group of guys the Kings have worked out, and maybe intel you've heard, who would Jerry Reynolds pick at 13?
Well, I think there's kind of two guys I think that I think are likely to be there. And like I say, I'd be really interested in taking a chance on Edie, but I don't think he's going to be there. I think he's moved up, but time will tell. But I like Deron Holmes from Dayton. I mean, he's a 6'10" guy that blocks some shots, can shoot the 3-ball, got a little shitbird in him.
Yes.
And Lord, you fans, I mean, you know what I know. I've said there, and then we need that.
Yes, you do.
So he might hurt somebody's feelings now and then, and all that. He's kind of a young Bobby Portis type, I think. And then Ron Holland, a real athletic slasher, dasher, big time potential defender. Now he can't shoot very well, and that worries me. I mean, if he gets so he can shoot at a productive rate, he'll be an all-star, could be an all-star. But if he doesn't, then he's probably going to be a terrific guy, Isaac Okoro off the bench kind of guy, or just all that. But I think there is some real star potential there. It's always easier to teach fundamental skills than God-given skills.
Sure.
You can't teach somebody to be quicker, faster, longer, but you can teach them to shoot and dribble better.
Damn right. And speaking of the shooting piece, some of the people that I've spoken to, whether they were at the combine or not, it seems like most of these picks, or a lot of these picks, are coming down to shooting potential. Who the teams think they can get the most out of or improve shots. Jerry, just how hard is that to project? I mean, is that something that's on a staff by staff basis where we think our specialists can work with him more, or is that something that's just a general feel, something you can point to in their form?
Well, it's great. I mean, I do think some staffs probably feel more confident that they've got a coach that really is an excellent or expert at that, and maybe there's less risk, so to speak. But I mean, I've always said there's a point where some guys just can't get it. I mean, how many shooting coaches did Shaq have, or
Sure.
guys over the years as free throws? Well, it didn't work. That's for sure. But
No.
But I do think that, what they'd look for is like, well, yeah, he's got some flaws in his technique. We think we can change that. And often you can. I mean, I would say Magic Johnson was not a good shooter when he came to the league. And a lot of people are not old enough to remember that. But by his third or fourth year, he's an excellent shooter. Well, he worked at it and developed a shot. So you can. And just like some guys who weren't 3-point shooters developed into that. I always say the one thing about shooting, watch how they shoot free throws. If they've got a nice
Interesting
free throw technique, they can take that out onto the floor. Just a matter of more legs into the shot when you get out deeper.
Yeah.
Then by the same token, if he's not a good free throw shooter, then all he's doing is just getting wilder when he gets the further out he gets.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think Holland, that's the question you have. But like I say, I think he's got so many pluses.
Yeah.
That you'd say, he's kind of a better version at the same age of Derrick Jones Jr., with Dallas. That
Yes.
spectacular athlete that really can cover guys and
Yes.
bounced around a little bit. And he's got so he can shoot enough.
Yes.
Enough. Now, and I think Holland is probably 2 or 3 years ahead of where, Jones was coming into the draft.
Yeah, it's a great comp and a great point. When I watched some tape on Holland, his ability to get into the passing lanes, and I also thought his hand quickness, his placement, being able to deflect balls, because he was playing for the G League Ignite. this last season. I thought that could be a huge asset for the Kings because Mike Brown's always talking about 50-50 balls, always talking about getting in passing lanes. And we saw what a Keon Ellis did for the Kings. So you get a bigger guy that can guard multiple positions like that. I think that would be a great option for them.
Well, too, as we talked about, you might not be able to go bigger.
Yeah.
So, okay, go quicker.
Yes.
So, all of a sudden Keegan plays 4, he plays 3, and you really can put pressure on people. I mean, you could get out muscle, that's for sure, but you also could create really a lot of pressure and keep the ball from the basket. So, there's different ways to play. That's all. And I think that's why get the best players you can and then try to make it work, I guess. But the Kings, I think they'll get a good pick at 13. It's just that you always worry, regardless how good a pick it is, can it, even Tyrese Halliburton, as good as he was, he didn't necessarily make the team better. You saw that he was going to in time.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Explain that a little bit more for.
Well, like I say, other than the all-time greats, very few rookies come in and move the needle. I mean, Wembanyama didn't win very many, I think 1 or 2 more games than they did the year before.
Yeah, great point.
So that's the truth of it. I mean, yeah, if you get Jordan or LeBron or Bird or Jabbar, yeah, they move the needle. But I don't believe you're going to find them in this draft.
No, I'm pretty sure they would be the lock sealed number 1 already in the envelope for Adam Silver to announce. Yeah. Right.
So I mean, it's just a little different. I mean, I think there's guys. Doesn't mean it's like Steve Nash didn't either at first, or Kobe Bryant didn't mean they moved it later.
Oh yeah, they did.
And so that's. But I mean, for Kings, let's face it, we're all selfish, and we want to move it tomorrow. I mean, like I'll say, Tyrese is a great example. I mean, the guy's a terrific player. Well, you knew he was, but he did not necessarily. Actually, I don't think he got any better at all. It wasn't his fault, but he wasn't who he is today.
No, there wasn't the opportunity to be
right.
That. You already had that on the team with De'Aaron. Yeah. You had that role filled.
So he had to basically adjust and grow and learn the league and all that sort of thing, just like most talented rookies do.
Yep, indeed.
Like De'Aaron did. I mean, it wasn't like, it took De'Aaron, probably in his 3rd year before you started to say, okay, now we start to see potential for stardom.
So where would you rate Keegan Murray then right now in between year 2 and 3?
Well, I think he's on track to be, I would say, an all-star potential.
Okay.
I mean, I thought he had an excellent second year. His rebounding went up significantly, much better defender. Very few rookies defended at or second-year players at his level. And the only thing negative was his three-point shooting went down. But I kind of honestly felt that was due to the team expecting him to shoot more threes, and he shot tougher threes.
Spot on. The team didn't get him the same looks.
No, as a rookie, he shot everything spot shooting.
Exactly.
Now he was shooting some threes off the dribble. Well, everybody in the history of mankind in basketball knows that shooting threes off the dribble is harder.
Much harder.
I mean, certainly Curry it's not much different for him, but that's Steph Curry. That's 1 in 7 billion or whatever. There's a few guys that are just about the same, but that's very rare. When it always percentages go down off the dribble compared to spot shooting.
Yeah, even you throw a pump fake in there, Jerry. I mean, I'm going to speak to the audience really quick. If you have a child that's getting into basketball and they like to practice and spot up, have them throw in a pump fake and then shoot it. Yep. And that's a whole different ball game, and we'll get them to a better spot. But it's much different, huh?
Yeah, show them the ball. Get them a good look at the ball, up fake, show them the ball. You'll be able to escape dribble, if not to another 3-point shot. The Reggie Millers and those guys have had it to an art form. But and most of the great 3-point shooters too. I mean, they pretty much trying to shoot the ball from a spot shot on the floor you get the defense running at you, and then the escape dribble, that's when they shoot the jump shot.
Yep, great
Off the
point.
escape, not standing. Because especially little guards, you're at the mercy of tall guys once you leave your feet.
Yep. And the Kings, they got caught a little bit too much off their feet last year for my liking. That goes across the board.
Yeah.
It just felt like there was a lot of things, and some of the people I've talked to around the team, free throws keeps coming up. Not just the making the percentage, it's getting back to the line and what that means to the team when you get to the line for defense, for other things that you want to set up. I guess what I'm saying is there were a lot of self-inflicted wounds there, Jerry. I mean, we've picked this thing apart many different ways, but I don't think the outlook is as bad as we feel. This thing seems to be turning the right way.
Well, yeah, they can. I mean, I think with the same team, you could do some things better, and you pointed out. I mean, clearly they didn't get to the line enough. Now, why is that? Well, they settled for too many threes. You don't get to the line shooting threes near as often as when you drive the ball at the basket. That's kind of the thing I think is happening in the league. They realize, that, okay, driving the ball and kicking it out for threes might not be as valuable as driving the ball and drawing fouls and trying to get three that way. And then the other bonus to that is you get in the bonus quicker.
Yes.
The real good teams are usually in the bonus with 4 or 5 minutes to go in the quarter. Well, the teams that are just kind of waiting for the three ball, sometimes they won't get in the bonus the whole game hardly.
Absolutely.
And as fans, we say, well, geez, they got 25 free throws. We only got 5. And the truth was, well, we weren't fouled but 5 times. I mean, we just, you can't go. There's no referees aren't going to put you on the line just because you want to go there.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. And then even just like at the NBA Finals, when Luka fouled out, it feels like there was only like a game or two this season for the Kings where the other team was in significant foul trouble or the Kings were in significant foul trouble. And that's a trademark to tough, hard-nosed basketball, some of the attributes that Mike Brown wants his team to play.
Yeah, I do think that's a way they could certainly improve. And I think, with Fox is capable of getting to the basket more. I thought he maybe settled. I thought he's better this year, but I thought he settled for 3 a little more than he needed to, even though he shot it better.
Yeah.
But I think what separates him is not his three-point ability. It's his ability to get to the basket and break people down and create easy shots for himself or others. And I think that that makes a team slightly better, I think. And then you got to hope that Monk will still get better, that Keegan certainly can get better, those kind of things. So yeah, there's reason to believe this team will be better if they don't get anybody else, but the scary part is you might get better and
everybody else,
because you can't control what the other teams are doing.
That's right.
And that's what worries me a lot. But I really enjoy this team. I think they're fun to watch. They can score. They got better defensively. I think they're going to be a pretty good team. But I just think we've talked before. I mean, they've just got to get more length, I think, and athleticism, and get a better bench. I mean, that's the bench just was too thin, and so.
Yep, and maybe a little bit of better luck with the health, opposite of the year before, but it all starts with the draft tomorrow night. Jerry, thank you so much for joining us as you always do on Tuesdays.
Always fun, and you and your fans and everybody. Yeah, great questions. Appreciate that, and looking forward to the draft. Like I say, I wouldn't be too upset if they trade the pick and get somebody to step in and help. But we'll see. If that's all they can do is prepare themselves to get the best player they can, and if they can't make a trade with the pick, that's all they can do. And none of us will know what was out there, but we can bitch about it, of course. But
of course, that's what we do. Yeah,
we'll second guess, but we don't know. But anyway, it's still a good time to be a Kings fan.
Yes, it is. I'm going to give Adam the last word. It's Jerry's world. We just live in it. Great point, Adam.
Well, thanks, Adam. I'm hoping to live it a little while longer myself.
Yeah, I don't think you're going anywhere anytime soon. So, Jerry, thank you so much for coming on this week.
See you guys. Take care.
Right.
See you guys.
Can't wait. That is the one and only Mr. Jerry Reynolds. How was that? What did you think of what we talked about? Some of the top spots. I really like what Jerry was saying about going big. I think that it's a proactive move for Sacramento. And if you've already decided that the three ball can't be everything, it's not the end all be all that it was the first year when the Kings made the playoffs, then going big is not a bad option. And I also thought it was very interesting that Jerry thought Edie and Sabonis could play together. Now, will Edie be there at 13? Like Jerry said, I don't think so. I think one of the teams will end up getting, I think either Memphis or Chicago. I know Portland came up, would probably jump at Edie if Klingon is off the board, but a lot of great insight there from him. MC, what's up, buddy? Really appreciate it. JJ's a scapegoat. He's the fall guy. Don't you know? Everybody's got to have a fall guy. So let's see. Let's get to some more comments really quick. Dennis, because the Spurs are gonna do it again. Do what again? Richard, hello from Texas. I will make sure that gets passed along. Patrick, thank you. Happy to be back. It was a very fun time. I'll give you the quick vacation review here in a few minutes. Imagine if the Spurs got Klingon and Castle. That would be nuts. The Yukon brothers going to the Spurs 4-8. I think, Sea Dog, I think they would probably take for Castle a lot more over Klingon. There's another guy we're not talking about. The guy that's probably most ready to come into the NBA, because the difference between a lot of these draft picks is what Jerry kind of laid out. It's the God-given talent. That it's the things you can't coach, right? But the things that you can coach is what's separating who's going to go where and what teams feel they can do with certain players. But there are certain guys, Zach Edey, the size you can't teach it, Klingon, the size you can't teach it. Let me throw another name in there. Dalton Connect. Dalton Connect is probably, I would say he could be the best scorer to come from this draft. I know he's supposed to go much higher than where Sacramento will be drafting, but keep an eye on where he goes and keep an eye on if anybody jumps up to make a move for him. But that would be a very interesting situation if San Antonio went back to back with those two. Well, at that point, maybe Greg Popovich, when he steps aside, it becomes Dan Hurley's team. Honestly, dog, maybe. Heedy has been mocked in the 20s. Yeah, he has. I'm still not convinced, though. First off, the mock drafts, nobody has any idea outside of probably, I would probably say Risa Shea is the favorite to be drafted at number 1. I think the Klingon talk is smoke screens trying to get teams to move up, or a team like a Memphis that really, really values him, a team like a Chicago that really values him. Here's what it tells you. And I saw some, the reason I didn't ask the question to Jerry about the GM in Chicago is this, Dennis. Chicago knew that the guy that they wanted would not be there at 13. So that 13th pick was of no value to them. So, but getting back to Edey, the shooting touch that came from multiple people that I talked to that watched him shoot and or work out. Not so much like, hey, he filled it up, but the smoothness of his shot, it was more natural. The release was softer than a lot of the other guys. So I don't know. I think we're going to have some surprises in this draft. And that's why at the start of the show, I said it's going to be a really exciting draft and a different draft, because there's so many varying opinions. And when the experts have it all spread out, it's because they're getting so much different information. Hell, Cody Williams, look, he comes from a great, great military family. Jalen, you know what he's done in Oklahoma City already, but there are a lot of concerns about him physically, yet some of those are being overlooked. But then other things about him not playing as much, and playing a different, because he had 3 injuries last season, and then also in high school playing a little bit of a different role, bringing the ball up in AAU. There's all these different variable opinions, and that's what makes this draft to me so exciting. It is not a locked in number 1, a locked in number 2, a locked in number 3. And I know every draft isn't always that way, but you guys know what I'm saying. Whoever is picked at number 1 in this draft is not going to be a slam dunk. They're not. But there is some really good talent out there. Ron Holland, who Jerry talked about, small forward, G League Ignite. He's a 3-and-D guy. He is exactly what you've wanted in a 3-and-D. Now, the 3 may not be immediately. His shooting needs a lot of work, but the D is there. And the defense is probably the one way as a rookie and or second-year guy that you can make the biggest impact on your team, i.e., Jerry and I talked about it, Keegan Murray. You look at the jump defensively that Keegan Murray made between year 1 and year 2. Go out there and ask a pro basketball player, an NBA basketball player, consistently to take a charge and see what the reaction is. It's not usually very good. Their bodies are their money makers. Well, guess what? Keegan, many of the other Kings, not afraid to put their bodies on the line and take a charge. How many big charges did we see this season, whether it was from Keegan, whether it was from Davion, whether it was from De'Aaron, whether it was from Sabonis? Keegan was the leader of this team defensively, and it came out of nowhere. Who was talking about Keegan Murray's defense in year 1? Nobody. Nobody. It was offense, offense, offense. Yet he made that massive jump. So what I'm saying is if you can come in and play some defense and get involved that way, it makes the flow of the game for somebody that may not be as talented offensively. It makes the flow of the game that much better for them. It makes their confidence improve. It makes the team better. In fact, it challenges your teammates. So a guy like Holland would be a very good move. 6'7". I thought the Derek Jones Jr. comp was very, very fair. Again, what intrigued me was definitely his ability to get into passing lanes, the quick hands. You team a guy like that up with a Fox and an Ellis in the backcourt, that is, look, the Kings go from having a very difficult time matching up with a lot of teams in the West to then being able to really game plan for matchups without considering running a zone defense, which, if the Kings do end up running some zone, isn't necessarily a bad thing. 10 years ago, if you said zone in NBA circles, it was a bad word, right? Like, oh, it's lazy. That's lazy defense. Who runs a zone in the NBA? Wait, they don't even play defense in the NBA, but it has become more of a skill thing. It's become a chest move. Now, in the NBA, where you change the looks, you might be running a 2-3 zone, but instead of showing a 2-3, you're showing a different look, like a 1-2-2, and then you shift in to the 2-3. And when you're doing those little things, like how Jerry was talking about picking up full court, it takes the attention off of getting into the play for the opposing team. It takes their attention from what's next to what's right in front of them. And when that happens, before you know it, boom, 8-second violation. Boom, before you know it, deflection. And there's only, 11 seconds left on the shot clock, and they're into scramble mode. Scrambling offensively is the best friend of the Kings defense. That's what they want other teams to do. And that's where they're able to make up the scoring deficits in what I call the special teams of basketball: turnovers, points over off of turnovers, the free throw game. So a lot to be said about what is next for this team. Most immediately now, the NBA draft. After the NBA draft, you have free agency. Then, after free agency, you're going to get into the California Classic. The schedule has been released for that. You can go check that out online. The Kings open up, I believe, against the Chinese national team at G1C on July 6th. And then it is full speed ahead. It is Summer League. I know the Kings very high on Holland. This is a great point, Sea-Dog. I've seen a couple of your points. He is an excellent passer for his size. He is an excellent passer. If the Kings could move up, that would be a very good pick. Now, what it would cost them to move up, probably not the best idea because, again, rookie, he's going to have to grow into it, but he can pass the ball for a big man. He's not a Sabonis passer. He's not a Lopez passer, but he certainly can move it well. Castle could be the best player in the class if he can develop a consistent jump shot. And that's okay. So that's what I'm trying to get across in this show about this draft class. If you haven't gotten it, that's why there's so much parity with these mock drafts. That's why there's so much dissenting opinions about where guys are slotted and who likes who. And to me, again, I'm going to go back to this. That's what makes a draft like this exciting. That is because teams are not picking on best available. They're not. They are picking on ceilings and potential. Sure, there's going to be some picks based off of the God-given talent, but most of these picks where you're going to see the movement tomorrow is, I guarantee, and that's why I asked Jerry if there was anybody that he thought would be a surprise that would sneak into the lottery. You are going to see a guy or two outside of Bronny James be drafted much higher than they are expected to be drafted. I can promise you that. And even if the Kings can't trade the 13th pick, if there's not that guy that they like, let's say Holland's off the board, Edie's off the board. Look, I know the Kings have cooled a little bit on Devin Carter. I get that. But a lot of those, Jacoby Walter, we've talked about them. I don't think Collier's going to be there. Point guard from, or point two guard from USC. I don't think he's going to be available. I said Collier. I'm thinking of Dave Collier, Isaiah Collier. So some of the names the Kings have worked out. Tristan De Silva is another one that keeps coming up. Another one of those Colorado guys. That would be a guy I think the Kings could trade back and get later. So trading back has always been an option for Monty McNair as well. C-Dog chiming in one more. Yeah, well, Topek, here's the thing. His ACL tear, not as significant as a normal tear. Does it make a big difference? I don't know. I don't think... It depends. If you can be patient with him, I think there's a lot of potential there. He would have been probably in the top 5 C-Dog had he not been injured, and he still probably will be in the lottery at some, maybe outside of the lottery. We'll see. But yes, the Kings just aren't in a position to be patient. They can't wait a year. They need a body, especially if you are looking at a Levine trade, if you're looking at any other big moves. Now, could the Kings try to get creative with Washington if Washington wants to be a trade partner and put Kuzma on the market? Possibly. Could they do some pick exchanges? What could happen? We'll know tomorrow because that's when the picks can be moved. But I look for Monty McNair to get creative. I really do. And you're going to see some teams. Again, I reinforce this. You are going to see some picks tomorrow that you think are reaches or that you think are way too high. It's going to be perspective. And obviously the front offices, the scouts, they know it better than we do. But I'm telling you, do not be shy about enjoying this draft and watching this draft because there is a lack of star power at the top of it. it is going to be a chess match between these NBA franchises, and I am very, very much looking forward to it. All right, so the moment that I know all of you have been waiting for, the whole reason you tuned in today, not Jerry Reynolds Tuesday, not the NBA draft, not De'Aaron Fox. No, you tuned in because you wanted to hear about Hell's Kitchen. Yes, Hell's Kitchen. I built it up. Like many times in life, sometimes you hype something up so much that before you experience it, it could never, ever, ever live up to the hype. All right. It couldn't. And I'm going to shoot all you straight on this. So we had a reservation for 5:30. We got there. So before we even got there, let's lay this out really quick. So we're driving up to Harvey's because our place in the Tahoe area is in Strawberry. Our family owns a cabin in Strawberry, which the big thing from this trip was we need to use that cabin more. It's a beautiful area. You escape the heat. You're only 25 minutes from Tahoe. So we played some mini golf with the little man. I posted some pictures on the X. You can go up and see those if you would like to. And then we went our separate ways. My parents took off with the little man to go do pizza and ice cream and all that fun stuff that kids get to do while they're on vacation. And the wife and I took off to Hell's Kitchen. So we're pulling up to, and by the way, one of the big discussions going into this was dress code. It was like, dude, like business casual. Like, what if Gordon's there? Do you think we're gonna get thrown out? Like, we better be prepared because it was kind of hot in Tahoe, but it wasn't like crazy, crazy hot. But it was warm enough to where, like, if you're wearing a sweater or a long sleeve shirt, you probably wouldn't be comfortable eating dinner. Like you want to be more comfortable. So we went through this whole dance. So we had our outfits set up, whatever. We had a contingency so we could throw a jacket on if we got called out for not being dressed nice enough. But we pull up to Harvey's, where Hell's Kitchen is located, and there's nobody in front of us to turn into the casino parking lot, but there is a mile, and I mean literally a mile of cars coming from the Nevada side in the right lane waiting to turn into Harvey's. And my wife and I look at each other. We're like, this can't be good, right? And then there's a security guard, police officer, whatever you want to call him. Wasn't an official police officer, maybe, yeah, probably security. Anyways, he's stopping every single car. And we're like, uh-oh, we're not going to make it to Hell's Kitchen, are we? And so we roll down our window like we're some special VIPs, like the coolest people ever, to say, hey, we're dining at Hell's Kitchen. And before we could even say why we were there, he's like, parking lot's full. And we're like, oh, okay. Parking lot's full, but valet is available. Oh, okay. Valet. So my wife and I look at each other and, we kind of go into these little Seinfeld conversations where it's like, well, what's the proper amount to tip a valet? Do you tip them the same when you drop the car off? Do you tip them more when you get the car back? Shouldn't you tip them more on the front end so they take better of the care of the car on the back end? Anyways, so we get into these little give and takes, but then we decide, all right, we'll do valet. Well, we waited for 30 minutes to finally get an attendant to come up to us because the cars were just there were so many of them. So finally, it's our turn to valet, and the guy says, hey, we're charging $50. Yeah, $50 to valet today because there's a concert. My wife and I look at each other. We're like, hey, we want to eat at Hell's Kitchen, but we're not paying $50 for parking. And so he goes, you might be able to get a spot behind Harris. And so we go drive around, and there's nowhere to park. Without the cheapest place to park was $25, and it was somebody selling spots from their cabin, like literally the spots, their parking area by their cabin. So anyways, we found a place to park, which may or may not have been allowable, but other people were doing it. We rolled with it. Anybody that has the new Apple Watch, you can hit the little compass thing. It'll tell you if your car moves or anything. So we'd get tipped off. Well, anyways, the car ended up being fine. We get into the casino, and a good friend of mine that all of you know by the name of Haunted Horse, he's like, dude, you got to play the Rich Little Piggies game. You got to play the Rich Little Piggies slot. So my wife and I go looking around for the Rich Little Piggies. We can't find it anywhere. And I end up playing some other one that I saw on the Vegas. I think his name's Vegas Matt. Saw it on his page, lost $25 like that. We asked about the piggies. She said, oh, we got rid of that machine a long time ago. All right. So getting to the part you want to hear about, Hell's Kitchen, we got sat early. The restaurant was full. Beautiful setup, by the way, much smaller than we thought it would be. But we started with, my wife got a beautiful cocktail. I do not drink really, so I went with the Pepsi, but we were sitting dead on to the kitchen. What was really weird though was there was only 2 chefs in the kitchen, like the open kitchen. Both of them were wearing blue coats from the show. We started with Arbizzle, thank you very much because you gave us money for an appetizer. We started with the what was it? The Wagyu meatballs. Okay, very underwhelming, much to be desired. Jen and I looked at each other, and the portion size was fine, totally fine with it. Portion size was fine, but we were like, we both didn't want to say it, but we were both thinking the same thing. Like, oh, well, like if we had this at, Italian chain, we wouldn't think it was that great, And so, anyways, we go on about our meal, whatever. Maybe it's the high expectations. We ordered the crispy skin salmon, which was a pillar of the Hell's Kitchen show, and the beef Wellington. Fabulous. 2 of the best entrees I've ever had in my life. I've been lucky enough to dine at some very nice can't even talk, restaurants. Javier's down south, if anybody's ever heard of that. Napa Rose, which is in the California Adventure Hotel, amongst others. The beef Wellington and the salmon were cooked perfectly. I will post pictures, or in fact, I already have posted pictures. Go to my ex. You can see those at Ryan_in_Sacktown. And then for dessert, they brought us a birthday toffee sticky cake. Fabulous. So here's what I'm going to tell you. Hell's Kitchen lived up to its reputation. Rarely does something live up to the hype. It did. The meatballs, not as great, but that's on us. Why the hell are you getting meatballs at Hell's Kitchen? I literally thought to myself, I looked across to my wife, and I'm like, Arbizzle would have been really upset with me because that was supposed to be scallops, and we went meatballs. We diverted from the plan. But anyways, amazing meal. It was great. It took about an hour and a half, 2 hours. I highly recommend it. If you are a Gordon Ramsay fan, if you're into that kind of dining, and the portion sizes, I want to reinforce this, very, very good. I was very surprised by that. So we had a fabulous time. And then on our way out of the casino, guess what we found? We found the Rich Little Piggies slot machine, which they told us had been taken out of the casino. So I played a couple bucks there, lost it. And that was it. So I do have a 20-cent voucher from Harvey's. If anybody would like to have that, I can hook you up with that. Haunted Horse, wait a minute. I just looked at your X feed and somebody photoshopped you in front of Hell's Kitchen wearing a wife beater t-shirt. What? Are you being serious? No, they didn't. Would that be you, Haunted Horse? Or was that the paparazzi? How did you know I was wearing that? Gosh dang it. Damn paparazzi. Yeah, Vegas Matt, that guy's crazy. He gambles a lot. But anyways, hey, this has been an excellent show. Thank you guys all for being here. a lot of fun. Nice to be back in the saddle with you. Make sure tonight you come back at 8 o'clock. Grant and I are going to be doing our NBA draft preview. I have done all of, in fact, if I could turn my camera around, I would show you. I've got my spreadsheet in front of me. I've got my player comps. I've got my assets, my liabilities. Grant will definitely have his 2 cents to pitch in on what direction he thinks the Kings should go and what he is hearing here in Sacramento. But please make sure you join us. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already. 7.1 of you, 7.1 thousand already subscribed to If You Don't Like That. We will be back 8 o'clock tonight with a full NBA draft preview. We will go through what we think will play out and the names that we have heard the most here in Sacramento and what ultimately happens, in our opinion, with that pick. But like I said, Jerry Reynolds today, my goodness, what an awesome piece of insight, conversation. Just the best. Jerry is absolutely the best, just like all of you. So thank you so much. Can't wait to see you later tonight, 8 o'clock right here, back again on If You Don't Like That. Another Jerry Reynolds Tuesday in the books. Again, a special thanks to Jerry for joining us here on the King's Court. We will be back to our normal schedule back tomorrow at, remember this, 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock. I know we've been changing the times up. We will run again tomorrow at 2. Get you ready. Hours away from the draft, any news that might break. And as you know, we talked some about De'Aaron Fox yesterday on the X account and the reports that came out. So appreciate all of you who chimed in on that conversation. 8 o'clock tonight, Mr. Napier, Ryan in Sacktown. We are back with our Kings NBA draft preview. Tedora, hopefully Serbia won today. I mean, I didn't see Baki in the chat. I know it was a big soccer game.
Holy moly, Jim Bowley.
There you go. Go Kings, light the damn beam. We will see all of you, hopefully, at 8 o'clock tonight for our draft preview. Court is dismissed.